Let's make a start.
Yeah. Well, thanks everyone for coming. Stay as long as you like on this. It's split out the format of this into two parts. It's going to be 40 minutes, so that's going to be until 7:40. Then there's a 10-minute break, and then there's a second 40-minute slot. As there aren't that many of us on this call, I think there's less than 10. We should go around just to say who you are, what organisations you might represent, unless you just represent yourself. So I'll start, and then maybe Mark, and then I'll introduce everyone else. So yeah, my name's Alan Pearce. I'm part of Climate Emergency Manchester. Mark, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I'm Mark. I think everyone knows me by reputation, and everything that you've heard about me is true. Thank you for coming.
Chloe?
Hi, I'm Chloe. I think I have met all of you. Nice to see you in your houses again. I should say that I've tried to recreate the full atmosphere of a council meeting. So I've got the security guards stand outside my door, and I've just had a big cup of really bad coffee. So I'm all set.
Next, I've got Anne. I think she's on my.
Hello.
Sorry,
my name's Anne
mid-chew.
Tucker. Oh, all right. Do you want me to speak?
Yep.
Yep. My name's Anne Tucker, and I'm sort of live in Moss Side, and I'm quite involved in all sorts of green things in Moss Side, particularly Climate Emergency Moss Side. And I'm also secretary of the Resident Association here, and I'm a member of the Green Party and Friends of the Earth.
Thank you. Richard, you're next on my screen.
You're unmuting me for me. Okay, I'm really here for myself because I want to know what's happening with the council. Always interested in how we're getting on with the council. I have been involved with Extinction Rebellion and Fridays for Future, though. That's it.
Thanks. Alison, you're next on my screen. You're on mute at the moment. There we go. You might have to hold it down if you. There we go.
There we go. Hi, I'm Alison Hordale, and I'm a member of the Green Party, and I'd very much like the Green Party to get more involved in holding the council to account. So had a chat with Chloe a couple of weeks ago. That was really good, and I'm really glad you're having this meeting tonight. So thank you.
Thanks, Alison. And Brian, you're next. You're currently on mute as well. There we go.
I'm unmuted. Sorry. Yeah, Brian Candleland. I'm also in the Green Party. Have been for donkey's years, and that's I suppose where I've come from. Also generally interested in climate and politics in Manchester.
Great.
Been Mark for a long time now.
He's a fixture, isn't he?
Longer than either of us would care to remember or admit, I think. I have a distinct remembrance of you, Brian, at the congestion charge debate, which therefore must have been 2008, explaining to some Tories who were laughing at all things green that the Greens actually had a councillor, which is more than the Conservative Party could say. And I remember them not enjoying that. So yeah, that was sometime in the middle of 2008. But I think by then we'd already sort of met a number of times.
God, is it really that long ago? I suppose it must be.
Yeah.
I lose track of time. Yeah. Yeah. I get the feeling not too much has changed, unfortunately. But we'll see.
Yeah. Well, we're here to do something different, aren't we? Just also a little bit for people that I don't know how many others regularly use Zoom, but there's also a chat function. So basically to the right hand side you should see a chat function. You can actually address everyone, or you can actually pick a person that you want to specifically ask a question. So by all means use that. Don't necessarily expect everyone to have 100% attention if there's a specific question you want to direct to someone. And yeah, that's fine with us. I don't feel guilty at all. Yeah, so I think by the end of this meeting, we want to leave you with a clearer sense of what the council is and isn't doing. What we're up to is Climate Emergency Manchester and how you can get involved if you want to. But obviously, if there's anything you remember afterwards or want to get in contact with us, we've got our contact email address, contact@climateemergencymanchester.net. I'll just put that in the chat here. There we go. So that's our email address. So if there's anything you specifically want to do, send that email to us. Yeah, on this occasion, I think this is the first one. We're going to ask the speakers to give a brief account of what their reports say, if everyone hasn't necessarily seen it yet. But in the future, I think, as with the sort of normal scrutiny committee, we'll take the reports as read. So yeah, I think, should we start? So let me just get my agenda up. And the first item is any urgent business. If anyone's got any urgent?
I mean, it can go in the any other business chair. Just, we've learned some more things about what's happening with the Labour Party in Manchester and with the budget process, but we can talk about that in the overview report.
Sure, that's fine. If there's any appeals, it says as if. Tell me, what did you mean by this, Mark? Because you put this down.
What did I put? I forgot.
You just put as if CM had any appeal. That was your joke.
It's an attempt at being self-deprecatory or whatever. Moving on.
Yep. Interests. Well, I don't know whether there's any interest. I think everyone's declared their interests. I think. Oh, I forgot to say, I'm a member of the Labour and Cooperative parties. There we go. That's my
we
interest.
didn't write. Change the meeting. We've got an interloper. No, I'm just kidding.
Nice
minutes.
To have the proportion slightly reversed, though. We have one member.
Sorry, can I get a hands up of who in the room, other than me, Chloe, and Adam, has been to a scrutiny meeting of the City Council before? Just shout out. Or you, Alison has, Richard has, Brian has, Anne has. Okay, so right, that's good to know.
Okay, well, we're on the same page then, aren't we? Can we take this recording as minutes, basically?
Well, we haven't had a previous meeting, so moving on.
Yeah. And then, so hung, drawn, and quarterly is the first item of report on our agenda. So, Chloe, are you going to sort of just go over that quickly?
Yeah,
Great.
I'll say a few words about this. So for anybody who hasn't yet looked at this, there are two papers linking into this agenda. If you want a kind of a good overview, go to the paper that comes with this meeting. If for some reason your brain's in the mood for some figures and some nitty-gritty detail, do refer to the hung, drawn, and quarterly report. Now, for anybody who's lost track of time and what's happened, which is very easy during lockdown, the hung, drawn, and quarterly reports, or HDQs, are our independent assessment of the council's progress against its promises. And this is the third one that we've produced. So the first one came out in October, a couple of months after the declaration. The second came out in January, and this is number 3. So they're all at different moments, but this one obviously comes at quite a particular moment during lockdown. We very much took that into account when looking at this report. But the key thing to stress is that it showed that even during that period between the last hung, drawn, and quarterly, which that came out in January, but really its sort of coverage stopped before Christmas, and well into mid-March, there, before any of this was planned, there was little of substance that was done on the climate emergency. Yes, there were lots of plans about plans and promises, But if you sort of codify it, as we did in our report, about what really is just another sort of strategy or policy, what isn't actually an action, there's precious little action. So that was the sort of more retrospective bit of this hand-drawn quarterly report. We also, based on that and other information that we've gathered since then, made a number of kind of more forward-looking recommendations. And it was given that there are a lot of these little sort of plans about plans, there's a lot of very different policies pulling in different directions, it is going to be all too easy for this not to have a truly embedded role in the forward planning and the COVID recovery planning. It's very easy that it could be something that is kind of just slotted into other plans. So that's why we one of our recommendations in the report is that for the zero carbon coordination group, so that's the unfortunately what could be sort of temporary body, as we'll come on to the petition, that is not something that is just put in as a footnote, but that group becomes embedded in all the decision making going forwards. It can't just be about councillors. And the other thing that we're worried about, though, is that in this forward recovery planning, the views of yourselves and other citizens are not about the climate and not taken into account in the forward planning. Emergency measures just encourage everything to be done more quickly, for power to be concentrated in the hands of a few. So that's why another recommendation to the report is that citizens really need to be involved in making this recovery a green recovery, or whatever language you want to use. And yeah, there's little sign that citizens are being consulted even in more normal times. So we're going to really have to push at that to ensure that it happens. I'll stop there, but let's take this as a starting point for discussion. And this can be at any level, even if you haven't looked at the reports, you're just curious about what's going on, or for those of you who've done your homework and have a particular question about anything that we've said, we can pick into something more detailed as well.
Thanks, Chloe. Yeah, and just a note to unmute yourself. I think Richard had a question. Just saw a hand go up.
Myself? Okay. It's not strictly about the climate, but I don't know where we're up to in terms of, I mean, from what Chloe has said, it sounds like the council is still operating on a small select group of people making all their decisions. So is anything else happening? Have they managed to organise any sort of Zoom style council activities for which would replace the other committees and such like that used to be there? That's my question.
Mark, sounds like you got a response. Was that a hand wave or not?
No, it was just an I agree, but Chloe, do you want to?
Oh,
I mean,
yeah, I can take it. So there's a couple of ways to answer that, Richard. The first is that Manchester City Council has been slower than many other local authorities around the country to move on to some kind of online system. I mean, it doesn't have to be Zoom. There's many that are readily available and that other organisations have used. So yeah, it's still some time before that kind of regular cycle of committees resumes. We're told that from June onwards, the scrutiny committee, so those committees that many of you will have seen us report on or even attended, will be back, but maybe not quite with the same regular sort of frequency. So as you may know, there's usually a week or 2 weeks when lots of them take place, and it may not be that all take place in a month.
yeah, thanks, Chloe, for that. I think you're now frozen, so hopefully you'll unfreeze, defrost soon. Are there any other questions that maybe me and Mark might be able to answer, but in the absence of Chloe being... Was that Chloe? No. I think she's got a bandwidth issue. Oh.
she's back.
She's back. She is
But
back
muted.
and muted.
Hang on, let me unmute her.
okay, I think the point I was ending on was that the reason we are meeting today is that there should have been a scrutiny meeting today. So another bit of your question, Richard, I think was about a small number of people being involved in decisions. And yes, that was probably always true. The kind of fabled ward plans and the meetings that were supposed to take place in all wards between the emergency declaration of July and generous interpretation April of 2020 have not taken place in all wards. So even again in that pre-COVID times, there was not full consultation. Just like many things, a kind of emergency or crisis just kind of accelerates or accentuates what was going on. So we've seen a number of instances of decisions being taken in an even smaller number of by people than already were before. Perhaps the flagship, if that's the right way to put it, the worst example of this, which you'll see be reported on in some local press, is the planning committee, which is now sort of operating behind closed doors and powers just being devolved to a couple of senior individuals within the council. So yeah, to sort of sum up your points, it's taken a long time to get regular meetings back online. We're still not sure when that's going to be. There hasn't been very good involvement of citizens, and there's been instances where sort of decisions making has been concentrated in the hands of a few individuals. Does that answer the different bits of your question?
I mean, the thing I'd add is that is all entirely in keeping with what any of us would have predicted, isn't it? I mean, we've all been around the block. If you told us to do a thought experiment, there ain't no surprises in what is happening.
Yeah, maybe just the other thing to add is, we kind of hear it's a bit anecdotally, but there are examples in other cities, other countries, where these things are not necessarily happening that way, so it doesn't have to be like this.
That's Chloe. Are there any other questions?
So what I think I'm hearing you and generally saying is that the green and climate agenda has now pretty much disappeared from the considerations of the core group members. Is that correct? Is that what the situation is?
You mean core group members of the council? Yeah. Well, I mean, that's something that I'd like to hear what all you have sort of picked up on, and maybe through social media or reading the MEN. I'll start off with my perception, but then maybe let's kind of go around. Is that that agenda is getting used and discussed and inserted into documents, different, and they are very much slogans and hashtags, be that build back better, green recovery. I'm seeing that language being used, but not anything tangible or convincing of that it might happen. But has anybody else observed anything sort of similar in documents?
Have you got something to say? Was that a wave?
Yes. Well, I'm not quite sure what you want us to do. Do you want us to unmute ourselves or put our hands up or what?
I think it's easier, yeah. Maybe just wave your hand about. And
okay, I'll wave my hand, right. Well, I mean, my side of it is more just the fact that there have been some good things happened in the last month or so, really, not least the Deansgate pedestrianisation, and certainly the partial one, which they've already got permission for, and then my understanding from social media is that it's actually going to be fully extended permanently, assuming that everyone's happy with this short-term one. I think that's what Richard Leese has said. And then separately to that, all the parking bays on the Curry Mile have been all suspended so that the Curry Mile is pedestrian and cyclist only. And I mean, it was done for Eid, but they're still there. So I don't know how long they're going to be keeping it there. But it's good because there should never have been any parking on that road. It's ridiculous. But you know, they had to because the traders refused to countenance anything else. And then they're supposed to be doing quite a lot of other bits where they're widening pavements. I haven't seen any of those. I don't know whether other people have. And it's difficult to know how much that's to do with COVID and how much that's to do with a better cycling and walking city. I mean, that stands to be seen really in the future, doesn't it?
Yeah, I haven't seen any personally. I don't think anyone else. I think, thanks, Anne, for that. And yeah, we can certainly try and petition Rusholme councillors and Moss Side councillors on the Curry Mile to keep it there for as long as possible and see what happens. For the parking bays, I completely agree with you on that. Brian, I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah. No, just quickly, I've not seen any pavement widening in parts of Manchester I've been familiar with either. And it's noticeable as soon as you go across into Trafford, you've got new cycle lanes as soon as you get New Stretford Metro. So, but if we're looking at Manchester, but I suppose the thing I've noticed mainly is the planning committee and decisions, and really the prospect of all planning decisions being held by just 3 people is appalling. And I just echo what Chloe was saying, that it doesn't have to be like that. It doesn't even have to be like that in this country, never in more democratic countries. So I think there's a lot we can criticise about the process there.
Yeah.
Adam, can I just come back? I agree with Brian, but I just want to add a couple of other things about the transport side of things. One, what's happening in Levenshulme potentially looks quite interesting in the traffic calming and all the rest of it. And 2, we have to remember that a lot of these decisions about cycle close lane creation, pop-up stuff, especially for Greater Manchester, are simply being taken at a Greater Manchester level. So we need to widen our focus from just intently looking at the City Council. Is there anyone who sort of lives or works in Stretford or Trafford? Because they've been doing some stuff as well.
I'm on the border with Trafford, so my daily walk often involves Stretford, and I've seen some of that.
Yes, and also they're closing a whole lane on the A56 of cars and making it extra bikes, aren't they?
Yeah, I saw that on Twitter actually.
Both sides. I mean, and it's the council leader who's claiming, and that's actually, I'm absolutely sure that's to do with the 2 Green councillors who are on the Trafford Council.
3. We have 3 now.
3 now, is there? Oh,
yeah.
gosh.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Keep up.
Even better then. But, you know, that's the sort of pressure that some people further left than Labour can actually put, or sorry, perhaps I should say more environmentally interested than Labour can actually put forward.
I have one other sort of point to put to this room about the transport, but first do Alison and Richard have any comments?
Alison, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think I'm as clued in as a lot of people. I need to get on Twitter and stuff like that, but I've been reading the MEN, and the planning committee was one, the main thing for me as well that I picked up. I wrote to Councillor Igbon, who's the chair of the Neighbourhood and Environment Committee, is it?
Yes.
And she seemed pretty cross about the whole thing as well. So I wrote to the CEO, what's she called, Joanne?
Rooney,
that's right, and got a very anodyne response, you know, saying nothing sort of thing. But yeah, that's the bit that I've been clued into really.
Thanks everyone for your input. I'm planning to move on to the next item if there's nothing else. I think that's been really good and really helpful. Mark, are you doing the petition, aren't you?
Yes. Hang on. One person admit. Yes, I am. I've just admitted Anne Tucker. If we could all wave at Anne. she there?
Anne's already on the call. So I
You
don't know.
admitted somebody
Sorry,
else, Peter.
and Power. Apologies,
Oh,
Dan Tucker.
Oh, and Power. Oh,
Yes.
well.
And Peter seems to be there as well now.
Hi, Mark. Yeah.
Hello,
Yeah,
Peter Somerville.
that's-
You've missed Chloe's report about the Hung, Drawn and Quarterly, but
Oh, yeah.
it's been recorded, and hopefully someone else is going to join us in a minute. Okay, so very quickly, we launched the petition in February, calling for a 7th Scrutiny Committee and for the Council to consider using
Yep,
some of its
I remember.
reserves. And the petition was going reasonably well. We were confident that we could get the 4,000 signatures. The initial plan was to get 1,000 online and 3,000 on paper. And we had a series of other people's events, whether those were school strikes or May Day rallies or festivals, or we were going to do a hustings that was going to be on April 22nd, Earth Day. And we were pretty sure that we could get the 4,000 without driving ourselves insane. There's no need to explain why things have changed, but things have changed. And so we, as Climate Emergency Manchester, still believe that we should pursue this petition. Unfortunately, most of that we feel is going to have to happen online. We're having conversations with graphic designers and webby kinds of people, but what I'd like to do is hear from everyone here on 2 specific questions. Any ideas you have for kickstarting an online campaign about something as abstract as a scrutiny committee on climate change in the middle of a pandemic where everyone is transfixed by, I'm not going to say his name, but we all know who I'm talking about, the one who cannot be named. And secondly, do any people have smart ideas for how you could collect on paper responsibly? We do not want to collect signatures on paper in real life if it's going to put anyone at risk. So those would be my 2 parameters. I'm obviously happy to answer any broader questions about the petition, but that's what we're hoping to get from you guys.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, so Peter, just in case you want to ask a question, just wave your hand in front of your screen and then we know you'd like to talk. That's the way I'm trying to do it. Alison first. I just thought.
Thanks. I'm assuming we would still preferably like signatures from all over Manchester, not just Chorlton and Didsbury sort of thing. So that's something we need to still keep considering.
Yeah, our initial goal hasn't changed. We wanted to get at least 32 signatures from each of the 32 wards, and we want to get triple figures from 3 particular wards: Whalley Range, Crumpsall and Harper Hay, because those are the places where the most obvious opponents, councillors, are representatives of, and we don't want them to be able to say it's only the Hume, Chorlton, Didsbury triangle where people give a damn. So yes, most definitely.
Peter, do you have a question yet? You just need to unmute yourself first.
Oh, yeah. Apologies if you already discussed this, but I was just wondering, because I haven't heard anything from Manchester City Council for quite a while, so I'm not really quite sure what they're up to in terms of the doing anything about the climate. Probably not very much, but I'm just not really aware of anything at all. So if you've got any information, news on that, I'd be grateful.
Yeah, so that was a previous item, wasn't it? And yeah, in conclusion, not much has happened. And that basically covers the period from sort of mid-December to mid-March, I think it is, Chloe. So yeah, we haven't seen much activity or information since then. I personally, we tried in the Russia ward to do a climate literacy training, but that was cut short because of coronavirus as well. So yeah, I think there were some plans, very like early plans being sort of pushed forward, but nothing else than that. Back to the petition though, has anyone got any ideas or thoughts, Richard?
Well, it's not exactly something you won't have thought of, but I personally belong to a couple of Facebook groups which are sort of campaigning or community in nature. One sadly is in Chorlton, but the other one is in Levenshulme. So, you know, I think there would be a sympathetic reception from the people, as I imagine them to be, on those groups, if there's something we can put round that people can easily understand and engage with. Okay.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's good. Alison?
I suppose an obvious tack is to relate it to what's going on at the moment. I know it's said a lot that people don't want things to go back to the way they were. They like the clean air, they like the green spaces, they like like being able to hear birds. I'm a maths tutor, and I can hear birds tweeting on the other side of the Zoom meeting, you know, from the garden. It's amazing. So if we could somehow connect that with having a 7th scrutiny committee, which does sound deadly dull, doesn't it? But so I don't know, that was just a thought.
Yeah, I think if we can use hashtags, you know, not in the new or not normal or whatever else, you know, try and get things trending. Also, I think, yeah, Twitter might be a good way of getting people to retweet and sign the petition that we don't, and use this as a way of saying this is a symbol of not going back to normal. Might be a good way of doing things. Anyone got any thoughts on the the paper side of things? I think online definitely is something we need to do. So yeah, anyone's Facebook groups and other ways. Brian, have you got something? Because I can't see you. Tell me you're waving.
No, I don't know what's happened to. I've gone into something called safe driving mode on my tablet house,
Okay.
and I can't see anything. This is.
Your eyes are all right.
Topical. Yeah, well, I'm in safe driving mode, so we're all right. I'll try and get it sorted when we have the break.
Yeah, no worries. Okay.
I can't access.
Don't take any trips to Barnard Castle.
Yeah.
I know.
Has anyone got any thoughts on the paper side of the petition? Really interested to hear your views on that. If anyone's got any thoughts to safely collect paper petitions. Chloe?
It's just a question, if anybody, you've mentioned that you're in other groups and organisations, or maybe even other kind of workplace related activities. Have you had any relevant discussions about when to do things face to face? You don't have to go into the full details, but is there any other advice that you've heard or information that you've heard about when might be, or how to approach people? That can be, that advice can be, don't do it for ages. It'd just be interesting to pool the kind of what's being said about this.
Alison?
Yeah, the Green Party, it's just no at the moment. So, you know, trying to just keeping a weather eye on when we can get out there again. But I'd say no, we haven't. This, you know, it's so difficult, isn't it, to have any kind of idea of any kind of date. So there's second peaks and all that kind of thing. So I would say not.
Yeah, I've heard from a couple of people, wife's friends and my brother's friends, they're talking about offices being shut or no one really being encouraged to go until the end of the year, and starting potentially back in the new year, going back. But I think it's all down to the employers, really. I think, but my brother might be going back earlier, but he's in infrastructure, UK Power Networks, so a bit different. I see we've got Anne. Yeah, have you been able to hear us?
Only the last 4 seconds, sorry.
Oh, right, okay, no worries.
I didn't get it on time.
So just to let you know, we're just discussing the petition and just some ideas around how we could potentially reboot our petition. We have been we collected several hundred signatures on paper, as well as about 250 odd online. But obviously now with coronavirus, we're thinking online will probably give us more signatures. So we're just having a discussion around potential ways to try and collect signatures in a safe manner, either online or paper, if that's a safe and practical way of doing so.
Yeah, I heard the last few moments of discussion.
Okay.
I'm isolated anyway, 88 years old, you know, I can't go anywhere, so I can't distribute leaflets physically.
No, that's fine. Well, you managed to get on Zoom meetings, are good things. Online world is still a big part of that.
Yeah, I've learned a lot about it, but I got in very late tonight. Couldn't get the hang of it tonight.
It's
all right.
Absolutely lovely to see you, Anne. It's been too long.
Thanks. You too. Yeah.
So the way we're trying to moderate this discussion is just that if anyone has a specific question, just to raise your hand in front of the screen so that we can see you have something to say, and then that means people don't talk over each other.
Yeah.
Did someone else raise their hand? Was it Alison? Did you raise your hand before? There we go.
Is doing something by post out the question? I know it's expensive. Do you have funds?
I mean, I was thinking this too, but what do you have in mind for doing things by post?
Don't know, I'm just sort of thinking on my feet here, because this is something we've been thinking about in the Green Party. So sending out something that people could send back with their signature on it.
Especially
but that's double whammy for postage, isn't it? I mean, I know
that's not a problem. We could send people self-addressed envelopes if they told us that they had completed forms, because the website which you can sign is such a ball ache. And so if there are houses where there are 5 or 6 people living, it's worth our while to do that sort of thing. And it shows innovative spirit on our part. The council won't accept scans of petition sheets. It needs to be the original. So either we could get them to post them to us, or we could go around and collect them socially distanced. Actually, that's not a bad idea, you know. If we got people to download, print off copies, get everyone in their house to sign them, and we could then go around and collect that on our bikes. That could work as a gimmick, couldn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And we can just like essentially quarantine it for 72 hours or something.
And do it as a street thing, you know. Try and get everyone on the street to print off a copy, and the 3 or 4 people who live in that house to sign, and then just go down and collect.
Alison, you had your hand up again.
Yeah, just thinking that, I mean, it's the sort of thing we sometimes do with surveys is get people to leave them outside. They just leave them somewhere in the, you know, porch just outside in a plastic bag or something. It could be collected, so you don't actually have to be you know, have people meeting.
When you're doing, sorry, when you're doing, yeah, I'm supposed to, yeah, I should have signaled. When you're doing one street at a time, you can ask them, and the weather's dry enough, you can ask them to leave them hanging in the letterboxes. They're very easy to spot and pull away.
No, it's very practical. I like that.
Yeah.
Chloe, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'm muted. So, spurred by some of the good ideas you've just had, another thing that it might be useful for you to kind of let us know about are any sort of street parties, events, sort of socially distanced versions of the types of things we might have collected at in person. I mean, even in sort of even for VE Day, there were kind of people who were doing street parties. Not proposing that we do that, but if you hear about a kind of event where you think it might be the right opportunity, maybe drop us a line and we'll see that. And then a sort of a related thought is what people thought about some of the kind of groups that have sprung up in response to crisis, whether some of those kind of thicker networks and those kind of new connections that have been made, if you think that some of that way in which people are in touch with each other a bit better might be useful, and we could sort of use those kinds of structures and networks.
Yep. Thanks, Chloe. Anne, there we go.
Okay, just to say, this is just a meeting and it is online, unfortunately, but that next Wednesday, I think it is the Climate Emergency Moss Side meeting, which will, if it was anything like the other meeting, there were 50 or so people there, and it'll probably be less because it's online, but there might be quite a lot, because the idea is people really keen to move on and find out what's happening. But I don't quite know how the petition would fit into that particularly, except we could put it on the agenda, I suppose.
Yeah, that's on the 3rd, isn't it? As I recall.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Which is the day before the virtual exec. Yeah, I think it's a really good idea, Anne, and I'll talk to Emily and see if she's up for that.
Okay.
Chair, I'm conscious of time.
Yep.
Zoom, having their enormous generosity, actually kept recording this beyond the 40-minute cutoff. But what I'm proposing is, if everyone looks in the chat, they should be able to see a message from me with the ID number and the password for a meeting starting in 12 minutes. And we were always proposing to have a 10-minute break so that you guys could have a cup of tea or coffee or whatever. Is now a good time to end this section and then come back